What makes Nigeria great? Everybody will have a different opinion, but I really believe patriotism is what can make Nigeria great and unify our whole nation. Nigeria is a diverse country with over 100 ethnicities. We have Yorubas, Igbos, Hausas are the main ethnic groups, but we have hundreds of minority ethnicities and different languages. People have different religious beliefs, different political views, different philosophical ideas on life. Nigeria is an extremely diverse country, and I'm very proud to be from here. I was born and raised in Nigeria, but then I went to study abroad in the UK. This was the first time in my life, in my boarding house, where I was a minority. For the first time, people didn't know where I was from and didn't know what I was used to. But in another way, they were very curious about me. And I realized that I had the power to influence their opinion about where I was from, about Nigeria. When I went to the US for college, this was even more emphasized, as I went from being a Nigerian to just being an African, because people didn't know where Nigeria was. I used this to my advantage. I realized that I could say anything about Nigeria, and I was right. So I changed my name. I told people that my name had a click in it, that my name was Ole. So I became the guy with the click in his name. But what I really liked about Americans, what I really found that was very appealing and inspiring about them was that America is a country of immigrants. People are from every single different country in the world. They're European Americans, people from Africa, people from Asia, South America, and they're all one melting pot within this nation. And they've built such a great nation. I feel that Nigeria has a similar diversity within our country. Yet we don't have those great, true Nigerian stories where people can connect on a community level that would rise up on a citizenship level and foster patriotism within Nigerians. I would speak to my American colleagues, and they all have such a great sense of pride in America. They have great stories to tell about their civil rights movements, the independence in America, and that all makes them so passionate about their country. Nigerians, we have a similar history. It's just not told as much. I moved home eventually about 18 months ago and to start Eaxy Taxi, and this is my team. You can see we're all very happy there, and we've built a community. So we built Eaxy Taxi on a simple idea. We like to say it's within ourselves, a stupid, simple idea of community. We have unified taxi drivers who are traditionally used to working against each other. They are used to sabotaging anything just to get an extra customer on a daily basis. They're willing to sacrifice their fellow taxi drivers, their reputations just for an extra job. So what we've done is we've transformed their mentality. We've tried to bring them a different approach to looking at their business. That if they all work together as one community, they'll all benefit more. So we do this in various ways by encouraging drivers that we do this in different ways by making drivers know each other. Because in a community, you need to know who your community members are. So for instance, in Lagos, we want drivers on the mainland to know drivers on the island, to know drivers in Epe, in Amuodofin, everywhere across town. We do events for our drivers. We make them feel part of a community so they have a sense of belonging. And in doing this, we inspire more professional drivers that are more dedicated to what they're doing. I feel like this is just a microcosm of Nigeria. It's the same thing. More Nigerians with community ties, with stories that we can relate to, will help us build up a more patriotic citizenship. And this will foster greater leadership, because it's citizens that become leaders. All too recently, the world has witnessed a global health crisis. And this relates to what I'm talking about community. In Nigeria, we are one community. In Africa, we are one community. And in the world, we are one community sharing this earth. A global health crisis has has entered our world in the last year. But only recently has it really gained public notice. Nigeria was fortunate in the fact that this global health crisis it wasn't a massive outbreak. The fact of the matter is, these global health crises, they happen every 300, 400 years. In the 14th century, about 200 million people were wiped off the face of this earth in a public health outbreak. The same thing happened in the 17th century. About 30 million people died. But nowadays, people feel that because we have 21st century medicine, we can control these things. That is true, but it's really the citizens at the end of the day that can impact and have the greatest impact on this and prevent outbreaks. I just want to read a quote from the BBC Thought of the Day. It says, "From a Christian point of view, God not only holds us in existence, He works in and through human beings at all levels, especially those trying to respond to human need. And I think especially of that woman doctor in Nigeria, Ameyo Adadevoh, and her small staff team, who with their quick thinking, managed to stop Ebola spreading from a patient they had diagnosed, so far limiting deaths in Nigeria to only 7. Those choices at both a political and personal level literally make all of the difference." From this, what I feel is that this author is saying that as human beings, we are all given life. And with life comes responsibility. So what do we do on the community level and on the citizen level to rise up to our responsibility? Dr. Ameyo Stella Adadevoh is my mother, and she's been heralded as a national heroine. There have been various headlines in the news about her and her small team's ability to stop Ebola spreading. Just to quickly and briefly go over the story again. A few months ago, in July of this year, a Liberian diplomat arrived in Nigeria. He was rushed off a plane after he had collapsed and rushed to a public hospital. At the time, the public hospitals were on strike, so there were no public doctors to see him. So instead, he was taken to a private hospital about 30 minutes away, where my mother worked. This is the same hospital I was born in, my whole family go to, and my mother had worked in for 21 years. The patient was admitted for malaria, and and when my mother saw him, she immediately suspected that he was suffering from something more severe than malaria. On hearing that he was from Liberia, she questioned him and asked if he had ever come in contact with an Ebola patient or been to an Ebola funeral. And he denied both accounts. At this point, my mother and her team decided to quarantine the man and to prevent him from leaving the hospital so they could treat him. At this point, the man grew furious, and the Liberian government were involved, ECOWAS was involved, and they ordered my mother and her staff to release this man. That it was a kidnap, and that it was against his human rights to keep him there. My mother and her team, under severe pressure, decided not to buckle. They stood their ground and cited the greater human good. That for the greater public good, they were not going to let this man leave. But at this point, their life had changed. My mother's life had completely changed. The hospital's life had changed. My family life had changed. And Nigeria's life had changed. Ever since then, people recognize what they've done to prevent the outbreak from really spreading in Nigeria, the most populous country in Africa. There have been headlines like Dr. Adadivo, our national heroine, the doctor that helped Nigeria to be Ebola-free. But what I realized from this is that Nigerians, why it connects is because it is a truly Nigerian story. It's a story from our community which we can relate to. Nigeria had no right to defeat Ebola. A recent WHO study on healthcare systems in the world rated Nigeria as 187th out of 190 healthcare systems in the world. So this really proves the fact that Nigeria has outperformed the expectation of us. Nigeria is now looked at as a model nation for containing this disease, for how our government and our leaders acted quickly to contain the spread of this disease. But my point is that it started at a community level. It started with a citizen. So my questions for all of us are, how will we take up responsibility in our own area of influences? And how will we exercise leadership in our area of influence? And how can we create the conditions to empower our leaders to do the right thing? By standing their ground at the hospital, despite intense pressure, my mother and her team were able to allow the Nigerian healthcare system to catch up and to be ready to control this. This started at a small community level. It is at the small community level where citizens are born, where great citizens are born, and where great leaders emerge. Through this, I've seen a knock-on effect, and more people are inspired by this story. At the end of the day, citizenship and leadership, I see them as just two sides of the same coin. Great citizens are the same ones that become the leaders. I hope that a more patriotic Nigeria, with more Nigerian stories on the community level that we can all relate to, will bring about a more patriotic citizenship amongst us and will lead to great leadership. Thank you.